This is the Comics Alternative, episode 230, a look at the March Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
That's right. And on this week's episode, Andy and I are going to be looking at the March Previews catalog. But before we get into that conversation, we want to let all of you know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those unbelievable specials could be as much as 45% off cover price, sometimes 50% off cover, but many times you can find discounts that are even more impressive than that.
That's right, and since this is our monthly previews episode, you can check out dcbservice.com for specials on many of the items that we'll be highlighting on this episode.
That's right. You can't go wrong with the great folks at DCB Service. So check out their website, which is dcbservice.com. You got to go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Well, Andy, I think that both of us have a number of things that we would like to highlight in this month's previews catalog. But before we do that, there are a couple of pieces of news that we should share with our listeners.
Yeah, we've got some interesting things going on.
Yes. And one of those is both a shout out from one of our listeners, but also an ongoing event on Twitter for the month of March, and that is the use of the hashtag tripod, TRYPOD. A number of organizations that deal with podcasting in one form or another, NPR, WNYC being two prominent companies doing so, are using the month of March to really get out the word about podcasts and how more and more people are listening to podcasts, and we would like for those numbers to continue growing. So for March, they're encouraging everyone to use the hashtag tripod. Again, that's TRYPOD. Along with whatever podcasts that you normally listen to, which ones are your favorites, and help spread the word. And in fact, we got an email from our host, which is Libsyn, saying that we should ask all our audience members to use the hashtag tripod when sharing their favorite podcasts and episodes on social media during the month of March, and to help things grow in terms of audience size. Libsyn is also suggesting that all of their podcasts, in addition to encouraging listeners to use the tripod hashtag, to come up with a unique hashtag of our own, each podcast. And they may feature that information on an upcoming episode of Libsyn's own podcast, The Feed. So we strongly encourage our listeners to share the love of the Comics Alternative and tweet out, or I guess you can do this on various social media outlets. Use the hashtag tripod and tell people that you listen to the Comics Alternative. And on Twitter, we're at the number 2 guys with PhDs. But you can also use a unique hashtag for us along with tripod, and that is Try Two Guys, TRY number 2 GUYS.
Are you sure that's not been used already?
I checked because when I thought of, okay, Try Two Guys, it sounds something sexual. And I looked it up, and believe it or not, no one has used that hashtag on Twitter, at least.
Well, that's good. I wasn't thinking. I don't know where your mind went. My mind went to the department store of my youth in New Jersey, Two Guys. That was named Two Guys. That's where I got like my confirmation suit.
So your reference was much more innocent than mine.
I had no idea where you were going with that.
So, that tells you something about me. One, I didn't grow up in the northeast area along the Atlantic coast, and that I'm a pervert. So, yes, everyone use the hashtag tripod and try2, the number 2 guys, and let people know that you listen to the Comics Alternative. Now, I mentioned that this is also linked to listener responses that we've gotten because one of our dedicated listeners, Alice Jaggers, has already used that tripod hashtag. In fact, just the other day, she tweeted out with the hashtag tripod, I love listening to at Two Guys with PhDs, and she listed a few other podcasts, but we were the first and the most important, I think. So we want to thank Alice once again for helping share the love and telling people to listen to the Comics Alternative.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and if our listeners want to thank Alice as well, she is at AJAGGERS324.
Yep.
Great person, dedicated listener. Another bit of news we'd like to share with everyone is we got a shout out from a fellow comics podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this took place about a week and a half ago, and this is from the podcast Secret Stacks. Now, before I mentioned this to you the other day, Andy, had you heard of the podcast Secret Stacks?
It does sound familiar, but I don't think I've ever listened to it.
Now, I hadn't heard of it before, but I saw that Secret Stacks tweeted out to us about their episode that came out, I guess it was about a week and a half ago. And so I checked them out. And they're a podcast with two people, Kristen Lalonde and Thomas Maluk, and they're both librarians. And Secret Stacks is devoted to comics and libraries, which is great.
Yeah, that's right. They came and talked to me at Heroes Con last year or the year before, while you were away from the booth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, now I remember. Yes.
So that's where you heard about it.
Yes.
Huh.
I feel bad now. I should have had that on the tip of my tongue.
Okay. Well, where are they located?
Oh, now you got me.
Are they in the Carolinas?
I have their card around here somewhere. I'd have to dig for it. But yeah, they gave me a business card.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. But anyway, I checked out their podcast, and it's really great. Basically, their episodes they start off with a little I guess comics news, comics and library news, and then they get to the core of their show. And what they do is each of them chooses 2 books to discuss, and they don't necessarily have to be recent books or titles. It used to be that I think each of them would choose 3, but then they decided to shorten the episodes, but also put them out a little more frequently. And so each of them chooses 2 titles, and they share those titles with the other and with the audience. And so it's a really good library comics-based podcast. But we were in a recent episode. We were mentioned, and I want to play that clip for our listeners. And so the premise here is that Kristen and Thomas are, and I can't remember the context, but they bring up the Beatles. And so they're talking about the Beatles, and then Thomas discusses a story that he heard about that break-in 2000 when someone broke into George Harrison's house. And so he mentions us. So let's go ahead and give that a listen.
Yep.
Can I tell you my favorite George Harrison story?
Sure.
I don't know if we'll include this or not.
Okay.
Everyone loves a good George Harrison story.
Who doesn't?
He's attacked in his mansion. He and his wife there's a 3-person brawl going on. His wife stabs the guy in the butt. They're fighting downstairs, knocking furniture over. Eventually, George gets stabbed. He's on the ground. There's blood everywhere. security finally picks up on the fact, like, oh my goodness, the boss has been attacked. They race in, and George Harrison's on his back, and like they're not sure if he's even awake at the moment. And then like he notices that the guards are in the room. He goes, "Hey, so how's the job going?" And then when the ambulance arrives and they put him on the stretcher and they're loading him into the ambulance, someone quoted him as saying, "This never happened to the Rolling Stones." And I'm like, this is why you're my favorite, George.
Yeah. Way to go. That's a good story, Thomas. We're gonna keep that in the podcast.
If someone ever breaks into my house and stabs me, I'm gonna be on the stretcher telling my family, this never happened to the Two Guys with PhDs podcast.
Our rival podcast.
So I think that's pretty cool that Thomas shouted out to us that, in his little fantasy scenario, this would never happen to the two guys with PhDs.
Yeah, little does he know.
Yeah, we may live weirder lives than he thinks.
Yep.
So, but Thomas and Kristen, thank you very much for mentioning us and for listening to our podcast. And we are listening to you as well. Well, Andy, let's jump into the March catalog because before we turned on the mic, I think you had mentioned something about having a lot of highlights for this month.
Yeah, we do. As usual, it's a previous episode, so probably could get long.
Yes. And if we start with Dark Horse, where do you begin?
I begin on page 58.
Okay. I have something right before that on page 57, and that is the second volume of Matt and Charlene Kent's Department H is about to come out. So volume 2 is called After the Flood. In fact, I just recently got from DCB Service my first volume of Department H, a nice hardbound volume, and so now we have the second volume of this title coming out.
Yeah, so are you reading it in the collections or in the single issues?
I started reading with the single issues, but now after the first couple of issues, I'm waiting for the collections.
Okay. I'm still reading it in single issues, but I've been reading it in like 3 or 4 issue chunks.
Okay, so kind of like mini volumes.
Yeah, sort of, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, it's probably more to do with my monthly comic reading habits now versus anything to do with Department H itself. I just tend to not read my monthly comics as voraciously as I used to.
Okay. But then we get to page 58.
Yep. And then there's more Matt Kent on page 58. Volume 1 of Ether, Death of the Last Golden Blaze, written by Kent and drawn by David Rabin. Mm-hmm. We talked about this when we talked about the first issue on a previous show, and so now it's collected, but it says volume 1, so that may mean we're getting more than one miniseries out of this. Yeah,
I wasn't aware that this may be something that is, if not ongoing, then something that would last beyond the first several issues. And we had even talked about the possibility, since we didn't discuss the first issue of Ether, maybe discussing the collection when it came out. Mm-hmm. Which we could still do. But as you mentioned, now they're calling this Ether Volume 1, which I would assume suggests there may be a Volume 2.
Yeah. And then right next to that is an original graphic novel called The Black Sinister, hardcover by Carrie Andrews and Troy Nixie, with colors by Dave McCaig. Mm-hmm. And this is looks like a dark superhero story. a pitch black tale of a city that lives in fear, not of crime or gangs, but the billionaire vigilante sworn to protect them. So clearly it's a twist on the Batman concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a pretty grotesque cover. So,
but it's a cool grotesque cover.
Yeah. So I'm curious about that standalone graphic novel, 72 pages, $10.
Yeah. So you can get this for only $9.99. Although if you get it through Discount Comic Book Service, you're sure to get an even better discount.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to this. And now, have you read Andrews's Renato Jones?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Are you reading it?
I read that first volume, and I thought it was really good. So that does have me interested even more in the Black Sinister.
Mm. Okay.
So where do you go after 58?
I go to 64.
Okay. And before 64, on 63, I wanted to mention more in passing than anything, Volume 3 of Angel Catbird is being solicited. Mm-hmm. We talked about Volume 1, and we mentioned when the second volume was solicited. So, in keeping with what we've been doing, I wanted to highlight the third volume, which is being solicited and will be due out in July. And
this will be the conclusion to the Angel Catbird trilogy. So I went to 64 with Glister by Andy Watson, collecting all 4 Glister stories in one edition. So you get a pretty chunky book here, 304 pages for $14.99. It's a smaller book. But have you read Andy Watson's Glister before?
No, I've heard of it. Have you read the individual volumes or any of them?
No.
Okay.
No, but I've read Andy Watson before, so I like stuff.
Okay. And in the solicit, they're saying perfect for younger readers. And so maybe this is something that Gwen and Paul could consider for a future young reader show.
Yes. It looks like it's a nice, got some nice fantasy elements to it. And Watson's art is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then I don't have anything till 72.
Okay. On page 70, I wanted to mention another narrative arc of Joe Gollum, and this is issue 1 of 3, Joe Gollum, Occult Detective, The Outer Dark. And this is written by Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden with art by Patrick Reynolds. And have you read any earlier Joe Gollum?
No.
It's good. I read the last, or at least part, not all of the last Joe Gollum volume, and it's really interesting. So I'm glad to see that they are going to be continuing Joe Gollum, because if I'm not mistaken, Joe Gollum began as pro fiction, and then they turned it into a comic. And so they may do something with Joe Gollum as they do with BPRD and Hellboy, in that we get stories in, let's say, narrative arc chunks whenever they come out, which would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm sure that Mike Mignola doesn't have much else to do.
Yeah. That kind of sounds like close to what they were doing with Baltimore too, that started, I think, as prose.
Oh, it did?
I think so.
Okay. And then you say you go to what, 70?
72. Yeah. So, we've got a new collection of, Gary Gianni's Monster Men and Other Scary Stories. Had you read Monster Men?
No, but this is just a new edition of the book that came out several years ago, right?
Right.
Monster Men and Other Scary Stories.
Right. But I'm glad to see it back. Back around again, and I really like Monster Men. I think it was a backup and I want to say a backup in Hellboy. But I may be wrong.
Yeah, I think so.
was a part of that when Hellboy first started, and it was a part of that Legend imprint that had Hellboy, it had John Byrne's Next Men, and Frank Miller's Sin City were all in that. And Monster Men, I think, was a backup in. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Hellboy.
Now, in this, because this is a new edition, in the earlier edition of Monster Men and Other Scary Stories, did Michael Chabon do the intro?
I don't know. I have the original issues, so I have not had the collection. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because on the cover image it says that Michael Chabon does the intro. I go next to page 74.
Yeah, I'm done in Dark Horse, so whatever completely you got. Done? Yep.
Yeah, in fact, this is the last thing I have in Dark Horse. And this is in, I guess, Dark Horse's manga section, because usually in the Dark Horse section, the last things that they solicit, at least book-wise, but usually they're manga. And there are a couple things here worth noting. On page 75, there's the next volume of I Am a Hero, the next omnibus volume. And this is rather timely for me because just this weekend I went back to reread the first volume of I Am a Hero, and in order to set the stage or to remind myself of things, so that I could read the second volume of I Am a Hero, which I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and that's a really, really good manga. It deals with zombies. A lot of people call it a zombie manga. I think it's more than just a zombie manga, but it's a lot of fun. And I know it was one of the favorite titles that Shay and I discussed last year on our manga series. But there's that. But on the previous page, on 74, still in Dark Horse's manga section, there is a solicit for H.P. Lovecraft's The Hound and Other Stories. And this is written and illustrated, or I guess adapted and illustrated by Gu Tanabe. So apparently this is a Japanese manga artist who is adapting various Lovecraft stories. I think they're adapting 3 of Lovecraft's original stories. And it looks interesting. Maybe this is something that Shay and I can discuss on an upcoming manga episode.
Yeah.
Unless you want to discuss it.
Nope. All yours.
Okay.
I mean, no, I'd be curious about it, but
yeah.
I'll let you guys have all the fun.
Okay. And that's it for me in the Dark Horse section. And then we come to DC Vertigo.
Yep. And I have something in DC in the Young Animal section on 128. I don't know if you have anything before that.
Yeah, in fact, I think I have at least a couple things in the DC section proper. That being one. So you're on page 128?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things when we've talked about the Young Animal line, we've wondered if there's going to be more titles coming out. And here we get the first one of those, which is the first issue of a 6-issue miniseries, Bug, The Adventures of Forager, done by the Allreds. So written by Lee Allred, drawn by Michael Allred, and coloring by Laura Allred. And this is Bug, or Forager, the character from the New Gods from Jack Kirby's Fourth World. And so basically going to be getting Michael Allred doing, looks like, messing around with a bunch of Jack Kirby creations in this miniseries. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and the New God stuff is perfect for what Young Animal seems to be all about.
Yeah, that's true. And Forager was a character that I never did much, it seems, in the Jack Kirby books, but I always liked the character's design. I thought of Jack Kirby had some great designs all around, and especially in the New God stuff. But I always liked the way Forager looked. So I'm glad to see more Young Animals stuff, and definitely glad to see Mike Allred drawing New Gods.
Yeah, well, the entire Allred clan.
Yeah.
I've got one other thing in DC proper, And that's on page 139.
Yeah, I'm there too.
Yeah, and this is DC Horror House of Secrets Volume 1 hardcover.
Yep.
And so this collects issues 92 through 97 of House of Secrets, and in, I guess, a nice hardcover edition. And this is cool because it's going to begin with the first appearance of Swamp Thing.
Yep.
Although I'm wondering, now the House of Secrets became the House of Secrets that you and I grew up with, beginning with, I think it was around issue 81, which came out in 69. And so I'm wondering about their decision to begin this new multi-volume hardcover series with issue number 92 instead of issue number 81 or 80 whatever. That kind of revamped House of Secrets to where it became from House of Secrets to the House of Secrets.
Right. Yeah. So when earlier it had been kind of a superhero anthology book for a while with Eclipso stories in it and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a good question. It may be that House of Secrets 92 is, such a standout issue anyway, and much reprinted. Anyway, but that may be where they're using as a starting off point. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm curious about this too, because it's only got 6 issues in it, 92 through 97, but it's 304 pages. So those were 6 chunky issues.
Right. And, I agree. Given the significance of issue number 92 with Swamp Thing, I mean, that's a good place to start. But the completist in me just wonders why they didn't start volume 1 with issue 81 of House of Secrets, and then begin the second volume with the Swamp Thing issue.
Yeah, no, I understand your question there. I don't know what the reason is, but these are still good books. Maybe they'll go back, but then it won't be volume 1.
Right.
But there's some great artists at work in these stories as well. Now that Swamp Thing story really isn't in the continuity of the Len Wein, Bernie Wrights, and Swamp Thing series that they did later. It's just kind of using uses the concept that would then later be explored in a different way.
Right.
But anyway, good stuff. I'm glad to see a volume 1 on that. I'd be curious to see if what other of the DC horror series they start to bring out. I would guess House of Mystery for sure, but then do they do Secrets of Sinister House,
Ghosts,
Witching Hour, Forbidden Mansion of Secret Love, or whatever it was called. The gothic stuff that they did, that was actually all pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I hope they do all of it, because that is much of what I read as a little kid growing up. And, I've said this on the show before. I did read some, a good bit of superhero stuff, especially Superman and Batman. But the vast majority of the comics that I read were either humor, when I was a kid, either humor books or more times than not the horror stuff. And House of Secrets, House of Mystery, Ghosts, Witching Hour, all that I ate up.
Weird war tales you were into, right?
Oh God, big time. Because I loved war comics, Sergeant Rock and all that. So Weird War Tales was a perfect combination for me. It was like kid orgasm, the horror and the war.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that they're doing this, and I hope that they bring this nice hardbound treatment to many of their other classic horror titles.
Yep.
And then I only have one other thing in the DC Vertigo section, and that is in Vertigo on page 151.
Yeah, that's where I go to.
American Way?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is American Way, the 10th Anniversary Edition. It's a trade paperback. 10 years. It just seems like it's been longer than that.
Yeah, that's true. It does.
Yeah. This collects the 8-issue The American Way series. And it's been a long time since I've read this, but it's a team of superheroes that's definitely not part of the DC universe.
Right.
And it's written by John Ridley, and you have art by George Genti, Carl Story, and Ray Schneider. I think this is a fun story. I even used it in one of my scholarly essays. I did something a few years ago on the uses of Mark Twain.
Oh, yeah.
And with this book, with this series, The American Way, I had a particular section in that essay where I looked at not adapting Twain, but using Mark Twain's image or using him as a character in various comics. And this was one of those examples.
Yep. Yeah, so this is like superheroes in the Cold War. Yeah, it's been a while since I read this. I know our friend too, Brandon Costello, has an essay on the American Way as well that he's written. So you two can duke it out over who's America's premier American Way scholar.
Well, that'll go to him because I used it as just one of several comics.
Sure.
So I mentioned it by way of passing. It was a drive-by.
It's very nice of you to concede that.
Sure.
But yeah, and I hear that we're going to get. This is also anticipating more American Way from John Ridley. After he won, the Oscar for the screenplay to 12 Years a Slave, he became a hot property, but it seems like he wants to go back to this comic he created 10 years ago.
Oh, cool. So are we going to get this through maybe Vertigo?
Well, I'm guessing if they're doing the collection, then that might be the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope so, because I just hope that DC doesn't try to do anything really freaky and work the American Way into the DC universe. Yeah,
no. I haven't looked at my copies of the series to see if it's. I think Ridley owns it, though.
Yeah. And then that's it for me in the DC and Vertigo section.
Yeah. I go to IDW and I don't have anything till 179.
Okay. What do you have on 179?
I've got the collection of Atomic Robo Real Science Adventures Volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
Collecting the story that Brian Clevenger did with Erica Henderson that stars Nikola Tesla. It's a good story. I have the single issues, but I like this. I like Real Science Adventures. So we're getting another volume of Real Science Adventures with the flying she-devils that we talked about last time, but now we're also getting a collection of the earlier stories.
Yeah, that's right. We did point that out last month.
Mm-hmm.
The first issue of the new Adventures Flying She-Devils.
Mm.
So there's that. And then if we turn the page, I wanted to mention the solicit on page 181.
Sure.
And this is Paul Cornell and Ryan Kelly's Saucer State #1. And if the names and at least one of those words in the title sound familiar, that's because Cornell and Kelly did Saucer Country a few years ago. I think an unfortunately abbreviated series through Vertigo.
Right.
And so now we have a follow-up series in IDW to a previously published and truncated series at Vertigo.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't think, have we seen a collection of Saucer Country coming from IDW?
Not IDW, but it was through Vertigo.
Right. But I mean recently.
No.
Like to coincide with it. So readers coming into Saucer State, you would expect that maybe IDW would have out a collection of Saucer Country.
No.
But no, I don't see. But we don't see anything like that. Yeah, so
we would have noticed that.
Yeah. Hopefully it'd be a good jumping on point. Yeah, you say we would have noticed it, but I can't trust myself anymore. I go quickly through all this. I'm sure I'm missing something good.
Yeah. Now, did you read Saucer Country?
I read like the first 4 issues.
Okay. Yeah, I really liked that series and was sorry to see it go. And for those of our listeners who may have not had the pleasure of reading the original series, Saucer Country, the solicit for Saucer State #1 reads, she was abducted by aliens. Now she's the president. Actually, it sounds a little timely. She's going to use the power of that office to find out what really happened, but will they let her? Saucer State is the sequel to and the conclusion of the Hugo Award-nominated Saucer Country. It's House of Cards does the X-Files. It's a bulletin from the brightest timeline. She will break the world to find who hurt her, and new readers can start here. Okay. So it says new readers can start here, but I would recommend that they go back and look at Saucer Country.
Sure.
Yeah. Where do you go next in IDW?
I go to Yo Books.
Yo, I do as well.
So page 192, we've got a new entry into the chilling archives of horror comics with Mummies. And this one edited by Steve Baines. So to kind of go along, I guess, with a companion piece to their Zombies book that focused on zombies and maybe even the Snake book. We've got a collection of stories here about mummies to, I guess, also to go along with the fact that there's a new Mummy movie coming out with Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe. So mummies will be on people's minds.
Yeah, it's going to be the hot new thing. Yeah, and I think Craig mentioned this to us at some point, or maybe mentioned it to me. But I remember getting a heads up that he was coming out with a Mummies volume. Yeah. So there's that, and then right beside it is solicited the next issue of Weird Love, number 18, which is always good. But then on the following page, 193, we get something else from Yo Books, and this is really interesting. Well, everything that Craig does is interesting, but this is interesting in that it's different. It's a different twist to the kind of things that he usually puts out, in some ways at least. And this is Drawing and Life Lessons from Master Cartoonists. That says it's an unparalleled book, the very first of its kind. Take it from uber rare, never before reprinted cartooning courses with expert teachings from cartooning's rock stars. Peanuts' Charles Schultz, Batman's Joe Kubert, Little Nemo's Winter McKay, Superman's Joe Shuster, Flash Gordon's Alex Raymond, Terry and the Pirates' Milton Kenneth, The New Yorker's Whitney Darrow Jr., Betty and Veronica's Dan DiCarlo, Prince Valiant's Hal Foster, Barney Google's Billy DeBeck, Plastic Man's Jack Cole, Gasoline Alley's Frank King, Popeye's E.C. Seeger, and many more icons of comic art.
Yeah, this is a neat idea for a collection here, for all this instructional material, and it looks like it's organized into different categories rather than just giving us, say, all of Charles Schultz's instructions. It breaks it down into the different approaches to things like character construction, expressions, composition, and so on.
Yeah, and you're going by their page samples toward the bottom. That's the one thing about this solicit that irked me, is that the page samples are so small and my eyesight is not what it used to be. I had to get really close to the page in order to make out what was going on. It'd be nice if we get larger page samples, but makes me want to go out and get the book all that more.
Yeah.
So something else to thank Craig for.
Right.
And then turning the page on 194, we get the next book in the Obscure Cities series. And in fact, this chronologically, I think, is the first book, Samaris, of all the Obscure City books.
Yeah, that's what it says here.
Yeah.
So we're getting the first book we've gotten, The Leaning Girl, and one other, right?
Right. And you and I discussed on one of the review shows, The Leaning Girl, about, 2 years ago, I think it was.
Right.
And that was when it was published through Alaxis Press before it became associated with IDW.
Right.
Yeah. So now, and I think that there was one between Leaning Girl and then Samaris, but now we get Samaris.
Yeah, The Theory of the Grain of Sand, I think, is the one in between.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the end of the IDW section.
Yep. Oh, and then we go into Image.
And then we get a number of new Image titles, as we always do.
Right.
Now, before we talk about some of these Image solicits, I want to ask you something, Andy. I was thinking about this today, in fact. Even before I started going through to decide what I wanted to highlight in the March Previews catalog. I was thinking that I don't feel as enthusiastic about Image titles as I used to be. A few years ago, it was almost as if Image could almost do no wrong. I would try every single one of their new things. And, sometimes I may not have liked a first issue, but at least I'd try it. But I was always excited to try a new title from Image. But over the past year or so, that enthusiasm has waned. I mean, I still like Image. I just don't have the enthusiasm. And I'm wondering if that's just me or if others like you may feel the same.
Well, I went through a period where I would get most of the number ones when they came out and decide on which of those I was going to read as a regular series and which one of those I'm going to wait for the trade or not read at all, not follow up on at all. And, there's just been over that time a kind of accumulation of series that I am reading, so I'm reading, Black Monday Murders, Kill or Be Killed, Paper Girls, and so on. And so, as those regular series have accumulated, I just have less and less room in my budget to keep trying new first issues. So, so unless it's something that really stands out to me as something I really want to, by a creator or something that I really want to keep up with, like, Royal City or Rock Candy Mountain. I'm going to be less inclined to try something by creators that are either ones I don't know or ones that are, kind of hit or miss for me.
Right.
And so, in looking, for example, at Regression, which is the first one we get in here, I like Cullen Bunn. I find Cullen Bunn's work kind of difficult to keep up with because there's so much of it.
Right. He does so many things.
Yeah. So I don't feel like Cullen Bunn's a creator that I will kind of buy everything he does, simply because I can't afford it. But usually I do try his stuff, at least, try the first issue to see. I'll be checking out Regression. I'm more interested in, what we've got from him coming up in the Oni section with The Return of the Damned.
Right.
But I'll give Regression a try.
Yeah. Now, I want to say that I didn't bring up this question to you specifically within the context of Regression #1, because this is one of the ones that in the image section I'm really glad to see. And so, you know, Cullen Bunn writes the story, and Danny Luckert and Marie Anger do the art. It's just kind of a general feel that I've had over the past year with Image. And I'm wondering if part of it might not just be image fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. But, you know, when something like, you know, Royal City comes out, you know, I'm gonna get on it. So if it is a book by a creator I'm excited about regularly, I will get that. But I'm less and less inclined now to try the newer Image books because I'm already committed to quite a few.
Right.
The same as, you know, I think this weekend was Emerald City Comic Con, and they announced a bunch of new series from Image there, and none of them really jumped out at me as ones that I was particularly excited to get. So I don't know. Well, I'll try most of them. Probably won't read most of those though.
Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned the financial issue that there's just so much coming out that you can't afford to get all of it. And also, I know with me, there's the time issue as well. And there's more that I'm reading now, so I have less time to read #1s from Image by creators that I might not be familiar with or at least overly excited about. And because of that, that's less exposure to Image. So it's kind of ironic. On the one hand, I say maybe I have image fatigue. On the other hand, I think that I have less time to read Image #1s than I used to have, or at least I'm taking less time than I used to. But I still like Image comics.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I just was going through the stack of new comics. I put that in quotation marks that I'm still working my way through and haven't read. And to give you an example of how my reading habits have changed, I ordered, I think, the first 4 issues of Snot Girl and never read one of them. And it's just keeps moving down to the bottom of my pile when I get new stuff on top of it. I need to, I don't know, take some vacation time with my stack of comics that have accumulated over the past 6 or so months and just sit down and read through them all. But I just, you know, I have to rethink just how I buy single issues of comics anyway, because I'm not reading them as thoroughly as I used to.
Right. So we mentioned Regression #1. What is another Image #1 that excites you?
Well, I am going to get the Youngblood #1 that comes up on the next page there on page 199. I'm excited for Chad Bowers to be writing this series. He's a good friend, and he's right. You know, he fits right in the wheelhouse of comic readers who were teenagers when the original Youngblood was coming out, and so he has the right, passion and sensibility for that project. So I'm really curious to see how that goes, and I'm happy to see Chad getting this high profile project.
Yeah, and I thought that you would probably want to mention this. I have no interest in, the Youngblood series, but the fact that Chad is the writer here is definitely worth mentioning. He's a friend of yours, and we had him on the show a few years ago.
Yep.
So friend of the podcast, hey, gets on Youngblood now.
Yep. Let's see.
The next #1 that I had marked to highlight is on page 202, and this is Eternal Empire #1, and this is from the same team who brought us Alex and Ada, Jonathan Luna, and Sarah Vaughn. Now, did you read Alex and Ada?
No.
Okay. I really like that series. I didn't read it all the way through, but I did not too long ago get the complete edition, and so I will read everything all the way through. I really liked it. I don't know if Eternal Empire is going to be up my alley because I read the solicit. There's some fantasy that doesn't do it for me, and this seems like it may be that, but I'll give it a try. Because the solicit reads, the Eternal Empress has waged war against the countries of Saya for over 100 years, and now her sights are set on the last country standing. Within the brutal empire's workforce, a young woman receives strange visions that give her the courage to escape her fate or run straight toward it. There may be something here. I'll give it a try and see.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I never got into either Alex and Ada or the Luna Brothers earlier stuff. So
Girl or The Sword, you didn't?
Right.
Yeah.
No, this is all kind of passed me by.
Yeah. Yeah. I like their stuff. I didn't read that first series, the big series that the Luna Brothers did. Oh God, what was it called? Oh, I can't remember. It's a team of, I think, women superheroes, I think. I didn't read that, but I did read Girl and The Sword, and I like that stuff.
Yep.
Along with Ada and Alex.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go next?
I just wanted to make a quick stop on 207 to point out that Dying in the Dead is coming back for its fourth issue. It's been a while since those first three issues came out, and so we're getting the fourth issue. It says it's 32 pages, so I know Hickman and Bodenheim were doing some different things with page length on the previous three issues, where some of those issues got pretty thick, and maybe they're going to a regular size series from now on. But I think it's nice that Image is putting out a direct sales only collection of the first three issues to go along with this fourth issue in order to get caught up. But I really like where that series began anyway. So I'm glad it's back. I'll keep going with it.
Yes.
So
I'd like to as well. Now, so they never did collect those first three issues of The Dying and the Dead, I guess?
Yeah, no, because there really isn't enough there for a trade. I don't know why they're calling this a new story arc. It really didn't. I mean, it was just 3 issues of the series.
Okay.
So I think there's going to be I think this kind of limited special edition trade paperback with those 3 issues is going to then be, there's going to be another trade with maybe the first 6 issues or so in it.
Yeah, but I think it's good since it's been so long since issue number 3 that they're doing this direct market only trade.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have anything else in Image? I think I have a couple more things.
Yeah, I have 2 more things. I go to 237.
Oh, okay. So I do as well. Nothing Lasts Forever, the original graphic novel?
Yes.
By Cinna Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it says another chapter in Cinna Grace's growing library of reflective memoirs, producing his strongest and most compelling tale to date, chronicling a year of heartbreaks, writer's block, career highs, emotional lows, and the emergence of a mystery illness. Nothing Lasts Forever is Grace's unflinching exploration of how to pick up the pieces and find hope when absolutely everything falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Also solicited again is his Not My Bag and Self-Obsessed.
Right. So, yeah, that's good stuff. I'm glad Image puts those out. Worth checking out. And then I go to 240, and that's the last thing I got.
Yep, same with me. And that's User.
Yeah, so we get a hardcover collection of User, the series by Devin Grayson, Sean Phillips, and John Bolton. It was originally published by Vertigo. Did you read it when it originally came out?
No, I didn't.
I think it was, so it was a 3-part miniseries, but they were like 3 square bound issues.
Mm-hmm.
So they were longer than normal. And so this is yet another example. We've seen this a lot lately, it seems like, of kind of older Vertigo properties coming back from other publishers. Saucer State that's why I was wondering why we haven't gotten a collection of Saucer Country to go along with Saucer State.
Yeah.
But User here was a standalone miniseries that deals with, as the solicit says, sexual identity and online role playing in the text-based MUDs of the 90s.
Mm-hmm. And you read this originally?
Yeah, I read it. Yeah, so I read it. I guess it's close to 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's been.
So I don't even have it anymore, so I don't remember. And I don't remember very well.
Yeah, I definitely want to check this out, given the subject matter, because I've even been talking with someone about maybe teaching a special topics course in the Arts and Technology program at UTD. Concerning comics that deal with new media in one form or another. And this would definitely fit into that syllabus.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I came up with that idea when the first issue of Snot Girl came out, because it's all about blogging.
Oh, okay.
Fashion blogging.
Maybe I should go actually read it.
Yeah.
Because I got it. I got the first 4 or 5 issues of that.
Yeah. Although the thing about Snot Girl, and we mentioned this on a previous show, I think I can't remember who I co-hosted with, but it wasn't you.
No.
When we read the first issue of Snot Girl, the thing that was so strange about it's set in a contemporary time, but in Snot Girl, blogging is kind of a hot thing. And that's something that maybe about 10, 12 years ago, blogging was kind of a hot activity. Now, not so much. And so it seemed a little anachronistic to me. I mean, an interesting story, but I thought I was fascinated by how they were using a certain social media platform as, the foundation for this series. And I thought, well, why don't, there are a lot of comics out there that do deal with new media in one form or another, and maybe there'd be enough to have a special topics course. User would fit in perfectly with this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would.
Yes. Now I did say that was the last thing I have in Image. One other thing I did want to mention, though, and this is not so much a title as, I guess, a promo gig that Image is doing, and this is on page 247. This is the Image 25th Anniversary Blind Box.
Right.
I'm not going to get this, but I think that those who are very much into the collecting side of comics may be interested in this. So it says, in celebration of Image Comics' 25th anniversary, Image Comics is printing 1,992 blind boxes, because they were founded in 1992, in commemorations of the company's founding. Each Image Comics 25th anniversary blind box will contain an assortment of 25 polybag comics comprised of 17 all-new 2017 series and featuring limited edition variant covers only available in this box. Each comic will be bagged in opaque black poly to keep every comic a surprise. And then they go into more detail about the kind of randomized contents that each of the boxes could include. So, it's intriguing. It's going to be a little pricey, but, if you're a collector and you want limited runs of certain titles, variant covers and whatnot, then this might be for you.
You said it's going to be pricey. How much is it? I don't see a price on there.
It's not listed here, but I know it's over $100. I was listening to our friends at Comics for Fun and Profit, and it was an older episode, and they were mentioning this in that episode, and they said it was, I can't remember where they got the information, like 100 some. Yeah, definitely not for me.
Yeah. That's a chunk of change.
Mm-hmm. But our friends at Comics for Fun and Profit, they're all about the collectability of comics. And so this is something that they would be interested in.
Yeah, it's actually $200 on DCB service. I just looked it up.
Oh,
so.
God, 200. Wow, I was off.
No discount.
No discount at all?
No.
Okay. Well, that's more expensive than I thought. Jeez.
Yeah.
So now we're in the back half of the catalog. We're past the premier publishers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm in AdHouse is where I start. I don't know if you have anything before that.
A little bit before that. This is on page 258 is the first trade volume of Terry Moore's Motor Girl. It's hard to believe that it's almost time for the first trade, but now issue number 6 is solicited on the same page. But we also get the first volume, which is called Real Life.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then I go to AdHouse.
Yep. So that's 264.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Sweater's Please Destroy My Enemies. Witty and irreverent funny comics by Michael Sweater, a skater, tagger, tattoo artist, and punk rocker raised on Calvin and Hobbes' The Far Side and Foxtrot. So this is a collection of cute, fun, and disturbing comics, all too relatable and gut-wrenchingly hilarious. Mm-hmm. So that looks like a fun book.
Mm-hmm. And then there's one right below that.
Uh-huh.
That is called Your Black Friend by Ben Passmore. Mm-hmm. It says Ben Passmore's necessary contribution to the dialogue around race in the United States. Your Black Friend is an open letter from your black friend to you about race, racism, friendship, and alienation. And now this is not published by AdHouse, but it's being distributed through AdHouse.
Uh-huh.
And we got an email about that, I think about a week ago.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. Did you see this?
No.
And I can't remember the name of the publisher, but AdHouse is the one distributing it, thus it being in their section here. So that's definitely something that I would like to read as well.
Okay.
And turning the page, there's the Aftershock section, and on pages 266 and 267, we get 2 number 1 issues from 2 new series from Aftershock. There's Pestilence number 1, written by Frank Thierry with art by Oleg Okunev, and then The Normals number 1 by Adam Glass and artist Dennis Calero.
Right.
Are you going to check out either of those?
I actually don't think so. I have not. There's not a lot of the stuff from Aftershock that I've been following up on much after the first issue.
Yeah. And even though I don't want to shortchange the number 1 issues of Pestilence or The Normals, I'm sure they're interesting. It's just I don't feel impelled to check them out. Mm-hmm. But we've been mentioning new series from Aftershock, and so I wanted to keep on with that because they're an exciting publisher, and I hope that they continue doing what they're doing.
Okay.
And then after that, I go to Alternative Comics on page 272.
Yeah, so Alternative Comics starts with The Diary of Menorah Horowitz by Menorah Horowitz.
That's right.
The creator of Miss U.S. of Heya, a true story about gender, Judaism, and gel nail polish, an autobiographical comedy about finding your authentic self in the artificial world of drag. So yeah, that looks that stood out to me. That comes through Floating World with Alternative Comics distributing it.
Right. And then on page 274, you do have the aforementioned Miss USA of Heya.
Yeah.
That is resolicited. Also, on page 274 under the alternative comics section is another one that I found interesting, and this is Danny Hellman's Resurrection Perverts, Volume 1, Hunter's Point.
Right.
In a near-future world, porn publisher Harry Hamburg clings to the hope that the exclusive photos of a U.S. president caught in flagrante delicto will save his crumbling business. Unfortunately, the universe has other plans for him. He will travel beyond the boundaries of our world to a strange place where the rules of existence are subject to the whims of unseen entities.
Yeah, there aren't the hero porn publishers serving as the heroes of science fiction comics. Just doesn't happen enough. So
this is filling that void.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's it. That's it there, right? For alternative comics.
Yes. And then where do you go next?
I go to Bergen Street on 298. So if you have something before then.
Nope.
Okay. So,
Revenger in the Fog.
Yeah. So we've got a new comic by, Charles Forsman, the creator of Revenger, a new follow-up. I guess the Revenger. This is a collection of Revenger in the Fog, numbers 1 through 4, and Revenger is Trapped one shot. So, we've talked about Revenger before. I like Revenger a lot. So.
Yeah. So I have not read Revenger, so you've been the one singing its praises.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's a kind of neat homage to 80s and 90s action comics, but it also does its own thing. And I think we had, was it last week or last month, we had another new comic by Charles Forsman, if I remember right.
Yeah, I can't remember the title, but
yeah,
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yes, I'd recommend it. And he's going to be at Heroes Con this year again. So it'll be fun to get a chance to talk to him again.
Yeah. Maybe interview him for the show.
Oh.
Now I go next to Boom Studios.
Okay. I don't have anything there, so go ahead.
Okay. Actually, on a couple things I wanted to mention, and this is on pages 310 and 311, and these are trade collections of series, at least the first issue of which have been discussed on the Comics Alternative previously. Now, last year, you and I discussed issue number 1 of Sombra by Justin Jordan and Raul Trevino, and that is finally being collected in a soft cover trade. And then on page 311, the trade of The Backstagers, the first volume by James Tynion IV and Rain Singh. Yeah, that's coming out, and that's something that Andy and Gwen discussed on the Young Reader Show, Backstagers number 1. So now that first volume is collected. Yeah, they really like Backstagers, and so our listeners may want to check out this first volume of the trade. And I know you and I enjoyed Sombra, so I'm glad that this is being collected now. I'd like to get that.
Yes.
And then that's all I have until Dynamite.
Okay. I stop at 327 in Chapter House.
Okay.
Really quick. Whoops, I blew past it. There's a comic that caught my eye in the Chapter House section. Let me get to it here. And
I just noticed this.
And it's Phantoma number 1 by written by Ray Fox with art by Sue Lee. Is that what you noticed?
Yeah, I completely overlooked that when I originally went through the catalog. Damn.
Now, this does not say that it is that this is Fletcher Hanks's Phantoma, but it sure does look like it.
Yeah,
and like it's an updated version, but it does say Phantoma's story begins here in a pulse pounding first issue. So there's no reference in this book or in the solicit or on the cover to Fletcher Hanks.
It has to be.
I think the character I'm guessing the character is in the public domain anyway, because it was published by, publisher that's no longer in business. So, but I don't know. Yeah. So then I jumped to Dynamite, on page 330, since we already congratulated Chad Bowers on landing Youngblood. Chad and his regular writing partner Chris Sims, both friends of mine, are doing a Sword Quest series for Dynamite now too, based on the old Atari video game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever played Sword Quest.
I didn't know.
Okay, it was a challenging game. One of the things I liked about it was that it came with comic books inside it, and the comic books were drawn by George Perez. So there were several. I can't remember how many different Sword Quest games there were. I think there were supposed to be 4, one for each of the elements. But I can't remember if all 4 of them were actually produced. So anyway, anybody who has a lot of nostalgia for old Atari games, there you go.
I never had an Atari.
Oh, I'm sorry that I highlighted your deprived childhood.
Yes, you did.
I did. I burned it out playing Berserk for more than 24 hours straight. Do you know you could do that?
I do now.
Yeah. So, I didn't know, number one, that you could play Berserk. I played one game of Berserk for more than 24 hours.
You're radical.
I couldn't do that today. I don't have that in me. I feel like something was lost. And then I go to 332.
Oh, before that, though, you neglected to mention that on page 331, there's an interview with Chad and Chris, a brief one.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, we can hear them or read about them in their own words.
Yep.
Yeah, and then on 332, we get yet another James Bond.
Yep. This one written by Kieran Gillen, who seems to be another no-brainer for writing a James Bond comic book, along with Andy Diggle, who did Hammerhead, which is coming to an end. So this is a one-shot, James Bond Service, written by Kieran Gillen and drawn by Antonio Fuso. So it's one oversized one-shot, 48 pages. So that's good.
Yeah.
And if I felt like there was any kind of decline in the quality of some of these books, the James Bond books, I would complain about how many Dynamite's putting out. But, I've really liked all of them so far. A lot.
Well, and again, this is just a one-shot, so it's not like they're introducing a new series. And if you remember last week, our Will Eisner Week episode where we looked at manifestations of the spirit since Eisner's death, I think toward the end of the show, we specifically discussed the fact that Dynamite, who now is doing the spirit stuff, is not doing with the spirit what they're doing with James Bond, and then much more notoriously with the Green Hornet a few years ago, and that is, kind of stack one series on top of the other at the same time. I think their head is still above water with James Bond, but with the spirit, it's only one at a time, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. So with this James Bond book, that means they've got that one shot, the regular series now that's being written by Benjamin Percy. The Felix Leiter series is wrapping up, and Hammerhead's getting collected. So I don't know, once the Felix Leiter series wraps up, I don't know. We'll see, I guess, how much James Bond stuff they'll be putting out. And then I go to 336.
Yes, I did not even know about this until I saw the solicit. Had you heard about this?
No. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In Dynamite's Project Superpowers line, which takes a bunch of public domain superheroes and does interesting things with them. This is hero killers taking the sidekicks from those recurring characters, and it's written by Ryan Brown and drawn by Pete Woods. And so if it's written by Ryan Brown, it's going to be probably nuts.
Right.
Sidekicks going wild in a way you'd never expect. Well, I'm on board for that.
Yeah. Well, and the solicit does have that kind of Ryan Brown feel to it. Mm-hmm. It says, "Welcome to Libertyville, USA, home of too damn many superheroes. Watch out, crime. Here comes Captain Battle Jr. and Sparky and Tim. Yeah, Tim. What? You never heard of them? Huh. Well, it's hard to be a sidekick when there's city full of capes running around, stopping every misdemeanor with a spandex-wrapped flourish. Now watch as things get weird when three lad companions, totally not weird, try to get to the criminals before their bosses do."
Mm-hmm. From the insanity-riddled minds of Ryan Brown and Pete Woods. I don't know if Ryan Brown is riddled with insanity.
Maybe to some people he's
been completely lucid when we've talked to him.
That's right.
On his meds, perhaps.
His sense of humor is unparalleled.
Yes, I think that I'm excited about that comic. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. Even if I have anybody has little or no investment in the Project Superpowers line, I think there's something going on there.
Yeah, I'm going to get this first issue, but I'm going to get the Ryan Brown cover B variant.
Oh yeah.
And so there's more in Dynamite that we have mentioned than in almost any single episode of our preview show. Because many times there's maybe one, sometimes two, perhaps, titles in Dynamite, but this time around we had, 4?
Yep. Yeah. So I go to Drawn and Quarterly next.
Yes. There's some good stuff.
Yeah, there's a load of good stuff in here.
Yeah. This is page 354.
Yeah. Now, this month's previews has a focus on women in comics, so it does seem like a lot of publishers are resoliciting key works from women in comics. So I'm not sure about if everything in here is new or what's new and what's reprinted
in the Drawn and Quarterly section.
Yeah, under Drawn and Quarterly. Yeah.
Well, the new things are Jillian Tamaki's Boundless,
right?
Guy Delis's Hostage, and Yun-Sik Hong's Uncomfortably Happy.
Right.
And then the rest of them are all resolicits.
Right. So was Linda Berry's 100 Demons originally published by Drawn and Quarterly, or are they now taking it over?
I guess they've taken it over because, and I don't have my copy of 100 Demons at hand, but it wasn't Drawn and Quarterly, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure too. I have it in a box over here with all the other autobiographical stuff I was working on. But yeah, I mean but even if they are taking that over now, that's a really important work that that deserves attention. But Jillian Tamaki's Boundless is a new book by an important creator.
Right. This is a collection. So this stuff, I guess individually the stories have come out previously. In one I recognize in the description of in the solicit, that issue from I guess it was last year, maybe a year and a half ago, from Frontier.
Yeah.
That issue that Jillian Tamaki did. That's collected in here.
Yep.
As well as other stories.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely want to check this out. And then we also get a new book from Guy Delisle, Hostage, and several of his other books are resolicited on pages, 354, 355, Burma Chronicles, Pyongyang, Shenzhen, and Jerusalem.
Yeah, and Hostage gets a preview in the Drawn and Quarterly Free Comic Book Day book.
That's right, yeah.
So if you get that, then just, I guess, a month later or so, this the story of how Christophe Andre, a administrator in Doctors Without Borders, is kidnapped and held hostage. Mm-hmm. So it isn't autobiographical as much of his work is.
Yeah, not that kind of travelogue.
Or reportage. Yes. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So it's a little bit of a departure, I guess, from what we see from him normally, but anything new by him is great to see. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's the Uncomfortably Happy by Yoon-sik Hong, and I'm not familiar with Hong, a Korean artist. It says, with gorgeously detailed yet minimal art, cartoonist Yoon-sik Hong explores his move with his wife to a small house atop a rural mountain, replacing the high-rent hubbub of Seoul with the quiet murmur of the country, with their dog, cats, and chicken by their side. The simple life and isolation they so desperately craved proves to present new anxieties. So that's something I would like to check out. If not for the regular show, then maybe Shay and I can look at this on an upcoming manga episode. And we've never looked at an example of Korean comics before, which I would include. I would put within the manga umbrella, I guess.
All right.
So, yeah, a lot of good stuff from Drawn and Quarterly. And as what usually happens, at least for me, you may have something before Fantagraphics, but right after Drawn and Quarterly, I go to Fantagraphics.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. What in the 2 pages of Fantagraphics solicits most excites you?
I don't know. There's we've got another part of the all-time comics series. This is Atlas #1, written and drawn by Josh Baer. Written by Josh Baer and co-written and drawn by Ben Mara. Atlas, and then the other thing I'm probably most excited about is a new Jason book, On the Camino, which is a memoir of Jason taking the 500-mile trek along the pilgrimage route of the Camino de Santiago in Spain. So those are the 2 things that stood out to me.
So you're not excited about the new Gary Panter?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to see it. I mean, I like Gary Panter. We'll see an adaptation of John Milton, or inspired by John Milton's Paradise Regained.
Right. This is called Songy of Paradise.
Jesus has been replaced by a hillbilly.
And we have a picture of the hillbilly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a new work from Simon Hanselman, One More Year.
Yep.
Now, have you read any Hanselman? Let's say Meg and Moog in Amsterdam or Mega Hex?
Just what was in the Year's Best Comics. That's all I've read. Yeah,
I'm the same way. And I ask because I feel that that's something I should be reading, Hanselman, but I haven't, and I feel remiss because he seems to be getting a lot of attention.
Yeah. Yep.
But there's that. There's also the 3rd volume in the S. Clay Williams mythology.
Wilson.
What did I say?
Williams.
The Mythology of S. Clay Wilson series. This one is Belgian Lace from Hell. We also get, and this is on page 359, The Ladies-in-Waiting by Santiago Garcia and Javier Olivares. So this is more of the Spanish comics that Fantagraphics has been doing quite a bit of over the past year. English editions.
Yeah.
So as usual, a lot to expect from Fantagraphics.
Yeah.
I go briefly to page 361.
Yep, so do I.
Under the fanfare, Ponent Mon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Furari by Jiro Taniguchi, which is rather timely because, was it last week or the week before he passed?
I don't know.
Yeah. And I looked this up, Furari, to see if this was previously published, and it has been, but I did see on Amazon that there is at least one edition with a 2017 date for the year, but I didn't see a month or specific date for its release, and so I don't know if this is a new edition or what. I would be tempted to think that they're mentioning the Taniguchi stuff here in previews because of his passing, but that couldn't be because they had to have laid out this issue of previews weeks or months in advance.
Yep.
It's just, rather timely that we get this solicit, but we also get a solicit for the first 2 volumes of The Time of Bachan.
Mm-hmm.
And then turning the page, 362 and 363, the first second section.
Yep.
Is there a particular first second title that sticks out for you?
No, I was figuring that you'd stop off here. This then looks like it's a lot of young adult stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about all of it is. And much of it that is probably prime fodder for our friends Gwen and now Paul, who's taken over from Andy at the Young Readers Show. I really like the science comics stuff that they put out. And so they got a new one that they're soliciting, Science Comics Flying Machines by Allison Wilgus, written by Allison Wilgus and art by Molly Brooks. So it's about flying machines. How the Wright Brothers Soared.
Yep.
That's interesting. And then on the following page, 363, there is Shattered Warrior. This seems really interesting. I was drawn to this by the artist, Molly Ostertag, whose work I really like. Now, the writer on this is Sharon Shin. So it says, it is 10 years after Colleen Kavanaugh's home world was invaded by the Durex, a tyrannical alien race bent on exploiting the planet's mineral resources. Most of her family died in the war, and she now lives alone in the city. Aside from her acquaintances at the factory where she toils for the Durex, Colleen makes a single friend in Jan, a member of the violent group of rebels known as Churamati. One day, Colleen receives shocking news. Her niece Lucy is alive and in need of her help. Together, Colleen, Jan, and Lucy create their own tenuous family. But Colleen must decide if it's worth risking all of their survival to join a growing underground revolution against the Durex. It sounds like I'm saying Derek.
Yeah.
But it's Derichets.
Yeah.
Where do you go after first second?
I go to 366.
Okay.
Just to mention that G13 is republishing Stephen King and Bernie Wrightson's Creepshow comic, which came out in conjunction with the movie back in 1982, which is a movie I watched a lot back then because it was on cable constantly. It was on, I think HBO is what we had. It was just on there constantly.
Yeah. I saw this in the theater, and then I've seen it since a number of times on like HBO, places like that.
And I always looked at this book in the stores, like when I remember going into a bookstores and seeing this on the shelf, but I never actually bought it. So this time I might get it.
Yeah. Now's the opportunity to make up for lost time.
Sure. And then I'm go to 369.
Right. I do too.
With Roundwood Books.
Yeah. Had you heard of this publisher before?
No, I was going to ask you that.
I had not. And when I saw this, I looked up both of these titles thinking that maybe because they're both listed under the, Women in Comics highlight. And I thought, okay, it's something that's come out before. But no, these are coming out this year. And so I wonder if Roundwood Books is either a relatively new publisher or if they're a publisher new to comics or just being listed in previews. I don't know. But both of these books seem quite interesting. Grandfather in the Moon by Stephanie Lapointe, and the artist is just one name, Rogue, Roge. And then Harvey, How I Became Invisible by Herve Bouchard and Janice Tedu. So I guess both of these are books, I would assume, in translation.
Yes, that's what I was assuming too.
And also reading from the solicits, they could be things that the aforementioned Young Reader series could discuss. Boy, we're pointing out a lot of books for them.
They're going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, they're going to have to up their game.
I gotta turn the page. Okay. I have a couple things on 370.
Okay. And what might those be?
First, under Hermes Press is doing a reprint of Jack Kirby's, along with Dick and Dave Wood, Wally Wood, and Dick Ayers, Sky Masters comic strip, Sky Masters of the Space Force. This is going to be a pretty sizable book. Now, from what I understand, Sky Masters is in the public domain. This was a 1950s newspaper strip that Kirby did while he was working at the same time on Challengers of the Unknown for DC in the 1950s. And so I'm curious to see how Hermes reprints this series. I know there was some talk of other people, other publishers of comic strips doing this, but Hermes beat everybody to the punch. And then next to that, from House of Anansi Press is Hardcore Logo Portrait of 1,000 Punks, which is I guess a comic biography of the Vancouver punk band Hardcore Logo.
And this is by Nick Crane.
Nick Crane, yep. Then I don't have anything till New York Review on 386.
Okay, on 385 under Nation Books, Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of Dungeons and Dragons. And this is written by David Kushner with art by Corinne Shamdi. And I remember we got an email about this, giving us a heads up on this. So this is, did you play D&D?
I played it twice.
Okay.
So I did not play it regularly.
Okay. While you were playing Atari, I was playing D&D.
That could be.
Yeah. Although I'm not a D&D like big time fan, so it's not as if I feel impelled to read this, but it does seem interesting to me, and I would definitely like to read this comics biography.
No, I Yeah, I either didn't have the attention span to play D&D, or I had one really, really bad experience with it.
Well,
I was playing with I had a stepbrother for a very brief period of time in my life, and he played D&D. I was playing with him and my little brother's character got killed right away. He started crying, and my mom said, "Can't you bring his character back to life?" And that just ruined it for me. So there you go.
I was going to say, if it's a function of your attention span, it could be because of all that Atari you were playing.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. But that seems really interesting. And then right under that, in the NBM section, is another biography. This one, Billie Holiday, by Jose Munoz and Carlos Sampaio. NBM's been doing a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
The biographies. But then if we turn the page to New York Review Comics, you wanted to mention this one.
Yes. So, let's see. I lost my page. 386. It is Father and Son by E.O. Plowin. It says this was a German comic strip done in the early 30s by Eric Oser, and it says it's one of the most beloved comic strips ever drawn. So we don't get a lot of reprints of older European comic strips coming into English, so I'm glad New York Review Comics is doing this. I definitely want to check that one out.
Yeah. Now, had you heard of this before?
Oh, no. I have very limited knowledge of early German comics like that.
Yeah. And the thing, I mean, it'd be one thing if this had come out, let's say, earlier in the 30s or in the 1920s, because it'd say, okay, well, this is an example of what was going on in Weimar Germany. But the fact that it began in 1934, I mean, right now, I mean, we're looking at the very tail end, if you want to call it that, of the Weimar Republic, what with the rise of Hitler. So I'm wondering what the strips are like.
Yep.
But something else interesting coming out from New York Review Comics.
Yep.
And in fact, on this month's episode of the Euro Comics series, Edward and I are going to be discussing Pretending is Lying.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. I like that book.
Yeah. Also a New York Review Comics text.
Right. So maybe you could have that one too. Have Father and Son, but I'm curious about it. And then I go to 388 with Oni.
Right.
And we've talked already that Oni was putting out a reprint of the existing issues of The Damned by Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurt. It was a 2-short miniseries that preceded their collaboration on The Sixth Gun. And now they're returning to The Damned, which is kind of, when I read this first before reading The Sixth Gun, and so I thought, oh, The Sixth Gun's like The Damned, but it's a Western. So people who are familiar with Sixth Gun are going to look at The Damned and say, oh, this is like The Sixth Gun, but it's gangsters.
Right.
So it's basically taking the genre convention of like the gangster crime family story and throwing in supernatural elements and monsters and so on in a really effective way. Right.
Now, we should kind of tease our listeners and let them know that we do have on the horizon an interview with Cullen and Brian.
I hope.
Yes. Well, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while, so if it doesn't come about, then it'll be tragic. But yeah, we've been talking with the Oni publicists about this, and so we're going to get them on the show, and they're going to talk about, this collected The Damned, Volume 1, 3 Days Dead, which is actually solicited on page 389. And then we can also talk about this new series that you just mentioned, A New Damned, which I guess is called just The Damned.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just briefly on page 394, Oni is putting out a pretty massive compendium of Anthony Johnston's and Christopher Mitton's Wasteland Compendium Volume 1. It's 750 pages for $40, which is a good deal. I really like this series. I never actually finished it, but I do want to finish it. But it has the first 31 issues, so I think that may mean there's only one. There's going to be 2 of these. I
guess so, yeah, because there were how many of those larger collected editions? 4?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember. But for $40 to get 31 issues of the comic in here, that's a pretty good deal. So I'd recommend this.
After that, I go to page 396.
Okay.
Pantheon Books.
What do you got?
This is My Brother's Husband, Volume 1 by Gengora Tagami. And I had not heard of Gengora Tagami before. And unless I'm really misremembering, this is Pantheon's first foray into manga.
And it's not a conventional manga, if there is such a thing.
Yeah. It says, from one of Japan's most notable graphic novelists, but again, I'd never heard of Tagami, but that doesn't mean anything. It says, a heartbreaking and redemptive tale of mourning and acceptance. Yiachi is a work-at-home suburban dad in contemporary Tokyo, married to wife Natsuki, father to young daughter Kana. Their lives are suddenly upended with the arrival at their doorstep of a hulking, affable Canadian man named Mike Flanagan, who declares himself the widower of Yiachi's estranged gay twin, Ryoji. Mike is on a quest to explore Ryoji's past, and the family reluctantly but dutifully takes him in. What follows is an unprecedented journey into the largely uncloseted Japanese gay culture, how it's been affected by the West, and how the next generation has the chance to change the preconceptions of and prejudices against it.
Okay, and it says it's one of 2, so it's a 2-part series.
So I'm looking forward to this. And it may be something that Shay and I can discuss on our manga show. See, we keep highlighting these titles that can be discussed on the various monthly shows. The Young Readers, Manga, Euro Comics.
That's fine. I got enough to do on my own. Just highlight all the shows that I don't do.
Yeah.
So I go to Self-Made Hero on 402 next.
Yes, that's where I go as well.
And so there's 2 things under Self-Made Hero. Herman by Trade by Chris W. Kim and Outburst by Peter Kudizer,
I guess, yeah.
And both of these actually look pretty good.
Yes. I think it's hard to go wrong with Self-Made Hero. I mean, I'm on board to about anything that they put out. And both of these from the solicits seem really interesting.
Yeah.
And, we've discussed quite a number of Self-Made Hero books in the past. And a couple of years ago, we even did a publisher spotlight on Self-Made Hero.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Then I go to 409.
Oh, before you get to 409, I want to mention something on 404, and this is under the Seven Seas Entertainment section. And Seven Seas does manga, and it's usually not the kind of manga that captures my attention. I know that Shay, I don't think I've ever read anything by Seven Seas, and Shay and I have never discussed any of their titles, but there is one listed on page 404, and this is just a 1 volume, so it's not part of a series. It's called My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness by Kabi Nagata. It says a heart-rending autobiographical manga that's taken the internet by storm. So I guess this was a webcomic. I didn't know that. My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness is an honest and heartfelt look at one young woman's exploration of her sexuality, mental well-being, and growing up in our modern age. Told using expressive artwork that invokes both laughter and tears, this moving and highly entertaining single volume depicts not only the artist's burgeoning sexuality, but many other personal aspects of her life that will resonate with readers. So something I'd like to check out to see. I guess I could look at it online if it's an internet sensation.
Yes.
And then, so you say you go where?
409.
Yeah.
This is under Taschen. The Airship Adventures of Little Nemo. This is 288 pages for $15, which is actually pretty reasonable for a Taschen book. And let's see. I don't know if the solicit says much about the specific story beyond just simply being that it is a, it's a Winsor McCay story, and Winsor McCay was very influential.
Right. Yeah. Now Taschen a few years ago came out with that really large, expensive hardbound that I think is complete. Little Nemo and Slumberland. So I guess what they're doing is taking a certain number of those strips where he was in an airship, thus the Airship Adventures, and putting them out in this softcover edition and keeping the price down by doing so.
Yeah. I'm curious. It says the size is 6x8. So unless they're cutting the pages in half, I'm not sure how this is going to be laid out. I'm curious to see how it's laid out.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I got.
In all of the catalog, the rest of the catalog?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's one other thing in the comics section that I wanted to mention, and this is on page 464 under the Z2 Comics area. And, Z2 is the publisher that has given us The Sweetness. They've also given us Cullen Bunn's, the aforementioned Cullen Bunn's Grave Lilies. But now there is a new book, and this is not a series, but this is a graphic novel, I guess we can call it, by Dave Chisholm called Instrumental. Tom is a solid but not great musician. Tom aches for the next level, whatever that is. And as musicians are wont to do in magical fables, he meets a mysterious stranger with a seemingly simple offer. Take a battered old trumpet for free and just enjoy it whenever Tom plays it. And just enjoy it. And whenever Tom plays it, the extraordinary music blows away his growing throngs of fans, and deadly mishaps start to follow. Tom may not have sold his soul for the music of the heavens, but he seems to have bargained away something much more serious. And so I really do like the premise. But we also recently got an email from Dave telling us about this, and I think it would be good if either we discuss this title on the show or maybe even interview him around the time that the book comes out, because in addition to the graphic novel, there is also a soundtrack, because Chisholm is a musician as well as an artist.
Right.
And so he has given us links to the music on his SoundCloud account.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. I was curious about listening to that and checking out that book too.
Yeah. So that's something that I'm interested in. And that's all I have in the comics section, but there are some titles in the books part of the catalog.
Okay.
And there are a couple of titles on page 473, and one that I think we should both be extremely excited about. And this is Graphic Novels for Children and Young Adults, a collection of critical essays, edited by Michelle Ann Abbott and someone whose name is quite familiar to listeners of this podcast, Gwen Althine Tarbox.
Yes.
Our own friend and fellow co-host, Gwen.
Yep.
Congratulations, Gwen. This is, I knew that this was in the works and it would be out soon, but it's exciting to see it listed here in previews.
Yes, it is.
So this is something that Gwen, along with, I guess, her colleague Michelle, has been working on for a while. And I remember when she was finishing this up, because I was corresponding with Gwen a few months ago, and she kept apologizing for her spotty correspondence because she was wrapping up the final edits of this collection. So for fans of the Young Reader Show or just fans of comics, period, I think this is something that you should definitely get. This is coming out from University Press of Mississippi. And then right next to it is another book. And I think the publisher of this one is Chronicle Books, I think. And this is Igort's Japanese Notebooks, A Journey to the Empire of Signs. Now, did you read Igort's notebooks of Ukraine and Russia?
No, we got a copy of it, though.
Right. And I know that Edward and I did a show with the translator of that. I've looked at sample pages of the Japanese notebooks, and from what I've seen, it's a book very much like the Ukraine and Russian notebooks, which was published by Simon & Schuster. And that, I remember, was solicited in the comics section. I think that the Japanese notebooks, for all practical purposes, is, I guess we could call it a graphic novel. But it's solicited here under books. So go figure.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and the last thing I wanted to mention, a title, again in the book section. This is on page 474, and perfect for Women in Comics Month. And this is The Spectacular Sisterhood of Superwomen, Awesome Female Characters from Comic Book History. This is a book by Hope Nicholson. And the publisher of this is Quirk Books. Quirk is the publisher that has given us John Morris's The League of Regrettable Superheroes, and soon to be published by Morris, The Legion of Regrettable Supervillains.
Right.
And I really liked the League of Regrettable Superheroes, the way that that was laid out, organized, and presented, and I'm expecting the same good stuff from the Spectacular Sisterhood of Superwomen.
Yep.
And there you go. Our romp through the March Previews catalog.
Yep, that was a lot.
Yeah, and you don't hear the word romp used on podcasts often.
I guess not.
And that's another thing that we bring you at the Comics Alternative, unexpected language. But appropriate, we hope.
Okay.
So a lot to look forward to in the months to come. And if you're excited about these titles, you know where you can get copies of these, and you can get them and pre-order them at great discounts. And that is Discount Comic Book Service. Be sure to go to dcbservice.com and pre-order everything that we just told you about in this episode, and you will find it at a significant discount. That's dcbservice.com. And after you do get your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you're going to be reading. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message via SpeakPipe. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way by picking up the phone and dialing 4153-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are two guys at comicsalternative.com. Or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we also have our Twitter feed, which you can check out at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can find us elsewhere on social media, such as on Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our podcast episodes, as well as the reviews and comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, simply by going to our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. All the ways to get a hold of us. Let us know how we're doing and find out what we're doing.
That's right. We do like to hear from you. And so definitely get in touch with us. But in addition, we want to remind you that over the next several weeks for the month of March, please do let people know that you listen to the podcast, The Comics Alternative, and you enjoy it. And when you do so, be sure to use the hashtags Trypod, TRYPOD, and our unique one, Try Two Guys. That's TRY2, the number 2, GUIS. And let the world know that you're a listener of podcasts and you have discriminating tastes.
That's right.
Yes. So until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.